Okay, it is 6:30, so I will call to order a meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education. It is Monday, August 28th, 2023, and we are in the OSD Innovation Center at Oregon High School. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Vizak, Dr. Bush.
Here.
Ms. Garrison, Dr. Lakuta, Mr. Pankratz.
Present.
Ms. Wright. Here. Ms. Flanagan.
Present. Board does have a quorum, so thank you for that. I do have proof of notice that this meeting has been duly noticed, so we are good there. And on our agenda tonight, we just have two action items, which is the approval of the 2023-2024, have to look at the year now, SRO agreement, and then the annual meeting agenda in September. So I will entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to the consent calendar. I will read the following donations. $655 donation to the OHS FFA from Culvers of Oregon, $50,000 to the OHS Science Department from an anonymous donor, and then $200 from donation to Brooklyn Elementary from Sharon Mason. So we want to thank those very generous donors for those gifts to the Oregon School District. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz.
Yes.
Ms. Wright.
Yes.
Dr. Bush.
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes, motion carries 4-0. All right, moving on to B, information items. First is public comment. Katie, do we have anyone here for public comment? Okay, is there anyone here for public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to OEA report. Is there anyone here from the OEA that would like to speak tonight? Okay, no one is here. And then students. So I'm guessing we will have some students here join us in October after school gets started and they get settled. So looking forward to that. Okay, moving right along to see our action items. The first is the SRO agreement. So I will turn that over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. We are very happy to be presenting an SRO agreement to you tonight for the 23-24 school district. I will turn it over to Ms. Jonan. She has been the person writing the changes in the contract and doing all of the follow through with what we were able to accomplish in 22-23.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bergstrom. So we will be seeking approval tonight from the board to approve the 23-24 SRO agreement. Our current agreement does expire August 31st, and so the village will also be approving the agreement if this board approves the changes. And so we do have an agreement that we will keep our SRO while the board and the village consider the agreement. So just to give everyone some background, of our SRO is our school resource officer, and we have a unique relationship, I would say, with the Oregon Police Department in the fact that our SRO really models itself after the National School Resource Organization program, and that organization recommends really a triangle role for the SRO. And so really where we put the emphasis is on building relationships with students, staff, and families. And the research behind that is that the best way that people have found to prevent a school tragedy is that having trusted relationships with students so that kids feel comfortable that if they see something, they say something. And that is the number one way. And so we look at our SRO as another adult that can be in our schools and hear from kids and be a place that kids can share information to keep safe, but also as a prevention and education person to help kids make safe and healthy choices. So we put a lot of emphasis on that role for the SRO in our school to provide a safe school experience, to assist our staff in prevention efforts, and in providing a law enforcement partner who aligns with our values. And that last part is really key. And so that's okay. So a few years ago, we engaged in a collaborative process with our families and communities, our staff and students, and we developed the SRO, that agreement that you will see in the packet today with some changes. And we're really proud of that process. So in the effort to continue that collaboration, the village and the board have met to review the goals and strategies for the 22-23 school year. And those goals were set. And then in order to evaluate how the program did on its goals, we engaged in that process again with our students, staff, and families and community and sought feedback about the program to see if the SRO was meeting our goals and what we could do to improve the program even more in the 23-24 school year. So you'll see those recommendations in your packet and I'll go through them in a moment. So in terms of the feedback we had for the 23-24 school year is that we received very positive feedback on the SRO program, that if we look at the time that the SRO was spending, that the majority of the time was spent either building positive relationships or engaging in mentoring or preventative activities. And that's exactly where we want our SRO to be. About 4 or 5% of the SRO's time was spent in strictly law enforcement areas, which is what we monitor for, because we're really trying to focus on the prevention and education component. We have a unique relationship, I would say, with the SRO, that before a ticket is written, if it involves something happened at school, that there is a consultation process with either myself or our administrators. So for example, there are times when something happens in school and we feel that we have tried prevention, we've tried education, we've tried meeting with the families, and we're at the point that we feel that issuing a ticket is either in the best interest in order to get continued support for the family, or the event is so serious that it's a law enforcement situation that needs to go to human services. So in terms of the goals, the feedback we received is that the SRO should keep building those positive relationships. He has a presence at the high school, he has an office, but he also goes quite frequently to the middle school and to RCI. And so wanted him to continue that. Another place we're really emphasizing this year is our Speak Up, Speak Out program. That is where people can give anonymous reports if they feel that something's happening in schools that is unsafe. And so we would like to increase awareness of that program even more. So that'll be a big goal for him in the 23-24 school year. Another piece of feedback that came out from the surveys, and Dr. Anderson and Larry Mayo, our Transportation and Safety Director, met with staff and students and did focus groups, so I very much thank them for their time. And a theme that they heard is that the elementary schools want to see our SRO more. And one of the suggestions was that he could come to the all-school assemblies and get to know the kids and have fun with the kids that way. So you'll see that on the action plan for 23-24. As well as middle school students wanted to see him on what they call the Panther Press, which is their TV station. So we talked about another video presence there so that he would explain his role, what he does, how to get a hold of him, tell kids about the Speak Up, Speak Out program, and other ways that they can contact him. We are really focused on training for the SRO because we want to make sure that he is a law enforcement partner that mirrors our values. And so the focus of training for 23-24 will be for him to train alongside of our staff. So on Thursday, he will be with our support staff and focus on trauma-informed schools. And then he will also participate likely with the high school on restorative practices. So we felt it's really important that he be with our staff so that everyone's on the same page and here's the same message. And he's also been trained in nonviolent crisis intervention, and that is every 2 years. So he was trained last year, so he'll do the refresher on that next year. Another key component that Dr. Anderson is working on with Student Services team is that the Department of Justice continues to update us on our behavioral threat assessment and management. So if a student does make a threat, there is a very detailed process that we go through to analyze that. And our SRO did do that training last year with our Student Services staff and will continue that this year. And then, as always in our district, we will continue to seek feedback from our school community about the program and how we can continue to improve it.
Is that the last? Okay, all right. I'll go around the room and see if anyone has any questions or wants to make any comments. I know Troy is on the SRO committee with me in terms of the Oregon School Board, but Leslie was also at the meeting. So if you all want to make comments or have any questions, go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, excuse me, I'll start. So thanks, Gina. Great summary of the contract. And this contract gets a lot of attention each year, and rightfully so. It's something that we don't just blindly update and re-sign. I would say that what I've learned is that the vast majority of our community and our students believe that there should be a police presence in our schools. And the foundation of this program is to build those trusting relationships with authorities. And I think Gina did a great job of summarizing how that works in the schools. There is really a positive regard for our current SRO, Officer Shuey. And what came up during the the community session was that there's really a desire for this contract or this agreement to survive that an individual officer. So being that the officer is doing a great job right now, is really great at building those relationships, and everybody really wants that to continue well into the future beyond any potential staff changes there. And I would just like to say, seeing that how the parties work together when we were at the community session, as well as the joint meeting with the village board, just seeing how the parties all work together really gives me great confidence. Everyone just has such a great collaboration, and knowing that there are going to be some bumps and disagreements along the way, but everybody really trusts each other and has the same goals in mind as outcomes. So, and I guess the last thing I'd just like to say that I found it was really interesting that regarding the goals in the contract, Chief Pagankoff talked about Officer Shuey and how he really goes through those goals and the strategies each year, and he's really diligent about checking those off of his list and making sure that he is achieving and using those strategies to do his work. So it's just important to note that the contract and the strategies laid out in that agreement really do seem to be driving the actions of the program. So I'm in full support of authorizing this contract.
Great, thank you, Troy, for those comments. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Leslie.
So last year when I came into this, I was kind of iffy on this because there's a fine balance between having the police in your school and having the police in your school. If that makes sense. I think this is the best way to go about this, because then our students and our teachers know who Officer Shuey is, or whoever ends up in that position in the future. And we have the opportunity to give that training and understand how he's going to work with our students, or she, if the case may be at that point. And speaking on the training aspect, is I'm a big proponent of training, and I think it's wonderful that he's doing the trauma-informed schools. But the balance there is that if he's doing a lot of training outside of the building, then he's not here in the building to work with our students and to build those relationships that we're hoping he does. So I think that the balance that we've come to, the solution of him working with our staff on the trainings, allows him to be local here in our building and actually still get the good training that we really desire our school resource officer to have. So I think this is a great solution.
All right, thank you, Leslie. Caleb, any questions or comments?
I guess I do have a comment. I mean, I absolutely support the agreement. I think things look very good, but I do know that there is some ongoing discussion about providing some sort of SRO presence in the Brooklyn Elementary School. As a resident of the village of Brooklyn, I know what a challenge the policing is in the village. We are technically in Greene County, but Dane County's like 3 doors up from our house, so it's a very odd situation. And I know there's some conversations going on about trying to figure out a solution, and I'm just hopeful that those discussions can be productive so that we can have, some sort of SRO presence in Brooklyn. But that's a discussion for another time, but I just wanted to make sure that I made a comment about that because I know it's an ongoing concern. Otherwise, I think the agreement's great.
Great. So Gina, did you want to go through the changes in the contract?
Yes, thank you. So if you look at the draft agreement for 23-24, the changes are highlighted. So we would be looking to update the dates. And then in paragraph 3, we are trying to move away from the term stakeholder. It's one of my learnings this year is that is a derogatory term in the Native American community. And so in the interest of diversity and inclusion and belonging, changing stakeholders in the agreement to school community members. And then just moving down to the training in paragraph 11. One thing that was suggested at our community listening session was to have the SRO trained in the National Alliance of Mental Health Crisis Intervention Training. And so when we talked to the chief about that, Kyle has been trained in that training. And so that was wonderful to hear. But as you've heard in the discussion tonight, that we want this agreement to not just be about Kyle because it is an SRO agreement. So I wanted to capture that training. And chief is working to have all of her officers trained in that. And quite a few have been already, is my understanding. Moving to paragraph 12. This will be Kyle's 4th year as our SRO. He did 2 years prior. And so with the positive feedback we received and the training he's done, and given that it's his 4th year, both the village and board committee members felt comfortable moving to an annual review of the agreement. We have been doing it semi-annually. Now this doesn't mean that the chief and the district wouldn't still be collaborating. We talk on at least a weekly basis, if not more. And so we would keep those meetings administratively, but in terms of the board and the village reviewing the program, that we're recommending moving to an annual review. Certainly if we had a new SRO, that could change. And this does give us the flexibility that if both sides want to meet more often, they certainly can. Paragraph 14 was also in response to community feedback that just letting the community know clearly in the agreement that the SRO is jointly agreed upon. So the SRO does apply. We do sit on the interviews and we jointly agree. If there would be a time that we couldn't agree, we just want our community to know that we could terminate the agreement with 30 days notice. And one of the questions was asked, well, would the SRO continue for those 30 days? That would really be up to the school. So I think it would depend on the SRO and the reason for the termination. So we could do that. What it really means is that we would be financially have to pay the village for those 30 days. So that gives them some notice for their budget, and the 30 days gives us notice if Kyle would be promoted or move, or leave the police department. It gives us some time to plan then for that absence. I believe those are the extent of the changes.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple things before I entertain a motion. I do want to thank Officer Shuey on behalf of the board. He's been a really, the position is the position, but the person in the position makes a big difference, and he's really gone above and beyond. And Chief Pagenkoff even mentioned that he's doing more than we're asking him to do, and building relationships is at the heart of this, both with our staff and with our students. So I want to thank him, and I also want to thank Gina and Chief Pagenkoff. What you see on the paper here is kind of the elements of the agreement, but there's a lot that's behind that in terms of situations that happen and things that we need to talk through, and they're open and honest with each other. They don't always agree, but they found a way to be partners in this. for the good of our students. And so that's really what we're trying to do here is both protect our students and work with them in terms of kids make bad choices. And it's our job to educate them about those choices before they make them or work with them after they make them so they don't make them again. So this is a really important agreement for not only our school district but our community. And so I want to thank you all for working so hard on this. All right, I will entertain a motion for approval. Is there a second? I'll second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to action item 2, which is the approval of the 2023 annual meeting agenda, which is a meeting that we have each year. And I will turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom to kind of walk us briefly through the agenda for that meeting, which this board needs to approve in advance of that meeting.
Thank you. Our annual meeting, it will take place on Monday, September 25th at 6:30 in this room. And it is different, meaning it's not a typical board meeting for those of you who have not experienced it before. It starts off with a budget hearing, the results of the audit, a financial report by Andy Weiland, and that is an important part of the process. And then we move into what we actually refer to as the annual meeting, where we actually have to appoint a parliamentarian, elect a chairperson, adopt ground rules. It's a very formal process. And that is actually where we adopt the tax levy for the school district, as well as school board salaries and expense reimbursements. And then we set the date for the annual meeting the following year. So why the annual meeting is at the end of September is a long and complicated story. All of the pieces in the budget process don't always line up perfectly, but by this time, Andy is able to share with board members, I think this year, a very good picture of the budget, as opposed to some other years when perhaps we don't have as much information. And that would be the extent of our agenda that needs to be approved.
All right, any questions for Dr. Bergstrom about the agenda or about the meeting? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
All right, Kayla, is this your first motion that you've made?
It might be.
We like to honor new firsts here with this school board. All right, is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Our parliamentarian has a question. or a
Point of order, and I apologize if I missed this. I think I have a typo in the agenda, that it should be the 2024. Okay, you fixed that already? I apologize.
8B should be
So we should have it
2024.
we should have it in the motion that it's, we're making the motion.
Oh, okay. All right, is that a? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright? Yes. Or, I'm sorry, Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Wright? Yes. Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to D, discussion items, which is committee reports. We did not have policy or visioning this last month, and I think board members got the email today about the September 7th. We're having further discussions with Andy in terms of the budget picture, given the complex nature of what was approved this year. So make sure you have that on your calendar, and then we'll be determining kind of where we go from there in terms of committee meetings this fall. Okay, moving on to E, information items, which is vision and strategic planning, teaching and learning update, and superintendent's report. So I will turn all those over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. And we just have some review for the vision and strategic planning component of it, because the last time we met, we spoke about the high-level district goals that were driven by the board priorities. So you can see that as part of the planning framework. We have our mission, we have our values, we have Portrait of Graduate as our vision, the board's strategic priorities, and then the annual goals and action plans. Here are the priorities that were established in spring of 2022. Very familiar with that. And these are the big picture school district goals: increased academic achievement through high expectations supported by inclusionary practices, increased readiness for learning by supporting students' physical and emotional well-being, retaining and recruiting high-quality collaborative and diverse staff, continuing to strengthen family and community partnerships, and big picture, ensure the fiscal sustainability of the school district. And all of those, of course, have specific action steps and measurables that are connected to them. And those goals drive the building goals. And it will be September 25th at a work session post our annual meeting that we will be having a conversation with our building principals about what their school goals were last year, what the results were, and what they are moving forward as we continue to gain systemic coherence in service of our students. And I think I'll move right to the superintendent's report. We have some fun things tonight. Not as many slides because August really is a whole different level of planning and getting ready, and so we're featuring different kinds of things, but they're still pretty fun. This is our high school principal, Mr. Pliner, and math teacher, Dave Ebert. Both were recently nominated to join members of the Air National Guard on a special flight for educators. During the flight, the educators observed the refueling of an F-35 fighter jet at 24,000 feet. So this was quite an adventure for Mr. Pliner and Mr. Ebert, where they're both very appreciative of their nominations, their ability to take advantage of this opportunity. We were very glad that such important members of our school community landed safely on the ground. We also have a wonderful crop of new educators, and you can see all of them here as part of the new educator orientation, and their experience level ranges from fresh from their college program to 26 years of experience and all the different levels in between. As a matter of fact, I think the average is 5.5 years of experience as an educator. And I think that's really important for us to understand, is that there are people joining us from many experiences and backgrounds in education, some locally, having served other communities for many years, some from even overseas. So it's wonderful to have this level of experience and background coming to us, and we're very appreciative of that. Athletics are in full swing, and that is very fun. So you can see that all of the sports everybody's had something already. So the students are back, and you can find more information at OregonSD.org/Panther Athletics. Another fun thing is Jumpstart. So, as we move closer to the school year, we continue to prepare our students to transition back to school, but most importantly, the transition to a new school within the system is a really big one. And we take it very seriously. So we have these Jumpstart programs for students entering 7th grade, 9th grade, and 5th grade at RCI. Our 5th graders at Forest Edge don't need a Jumpstart because they stay in the same school. So you can see here some examples of fun things that are happening at the high school as a part of Jumpstart. You see Mr. Pliner doing an inspirational talk. You see some teachers who are doing some fun games on the floor of the gymnasium. But whatever needs to be done in order to create a sense of positivity, responsibility, involvement, development, and empathy, you can see that on the shirts that all the people wore. That's what we do, because this is an important part of helping students take that next step and making sure they have all of the supports that are necessary for that to happen. And then it's very busy at back to school time, and parents are oftentimes trying to juggle different students at different schools within the system, trying to keep all of these pieces of information straight. And our website resources are meant to be a service to our families all times, but specifically at this busy time. So you can see there's information, everything from registration to the link to our podcasts. And all of it is there on our website. You can see the pattern, OregonSD.org / and then whatever it is you're looking for. And the resources are well built out and are really just there for you and to make life a little bit easier. Speaking of trying to make life a little bit easier, we know that when our little ones are starting kindergarten, that is a huge transition for them, but it's also a huge transition for the families. And there are so many questions about what kindergarten looks like, feels like, sounds like, you name it. So last week, I gathered with some of our kindergarten teachers. You see a representative from all of our buildings there to talk about what the transition to kindergarten is like. And they answered really common questions that most of our families have. And so we've sent out an email blast with the link to the podcast for our families. We also will have the QR code available at our Ready, Set, Go meetings this week. I think it's Wednesday evening and Thursday morning are when our Ready, Set, Go conferences are scheduled. And so our families will be coming in, and if they have questions after Ready, Set, Go, they can just click on the QR code and listen to the podcast. And really, there's a lot of good information in there. And if you had any worries, as soon as you start listening to how sweet and kind our kindergarten teachers are, I think people start to relax. And that's it.
You know, it's interesting. I've been on this board for 8 years, so I've been around a little bit, but you talked a lot about transitions, and I don't know if people remember, but Erica was hired about 5 years ago, and one of her big things was transitions and how we handle kids moving from different buildings, because we're a unique district in that sense that we have more transitions, right? You're a K4, then you go 5, 6, then you go 7, 8, and you go 9, 12, and a lot of school districts don't have that many. And so just think about all the things that we've created to help families and kids with transitions now in terms of the kindergarten orientation and the Ready, Set, Go conferences and the jump starts that are not just RCI anymore. There's OMS and there's the high school. So Erica, way to go. I mean, that was kind of a brainchild of you and put it into kind of the conversation of all of us at the board level and the district level. And so I think it's really cool now to see all the different things that we are doing with our families to make sure that their kiddos are comfortable when they enter into a new building, that when they show up for the first day of school, if they want, they've got a reference point or they have somebody that they know or they've been through the school before. So I think that's just another touch of things that we do to tie the bow for our school district, and it's really cool. So anyway, okay. Moving on to F, closing. Future agenda. Our next meeting is September 11th, so that will be a regular board meeting. And then as Dr. Bergstrom mentioned, on the 25th, we do have the annual meeting. Then we will have a regular school board meeting after the budget hearing, annual meeting, then a regular school board meeting. So that's our scoop for September as we hit back at it. All right, moving to checkout. Troy, anything? Leslie? Caleb? Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at just after 7 o'clock. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 7:01. Thank you.